I am Cousin Juwan. Each week I'm joined by dope local entrepreneurs, artists, designers, just all around people who are blessed to be in a space where we're able to create. This week, I'm super excited. I am joined by one of the dopest graphic design artists in the state, in the Midwest, a matter of fact. Before I introduce him, so while we're getting set up, this man, you learn a lot from somebody by just paying attention to how they move when you first meet them. There was all chaos going around in the room. I noticed that my guy calmly sat down, whipped out his laptop, got to work. Didn't say nothing, didn't ask no questions, just got to the grind. And I appreciate that because too many people, they don't want to grind that hard. Like, it takes a certain type of person when things are chaotic around them, just be like, you know what? I got this. Let me hammer some work out. So to introduce, I am joined by Ian Deloney. That's it. That's the last name. Right? I was a little afraid.
You good, bro?
Ian is one of the dopest graphic designers. I checked his Instagram. I've seen his work. He has a great calendar we're gonna get to. You are something special. My first question though it's a tricky one, but who is Ian?
Man, that's a tough question. I would say Ian is somebody who knows what they want in life. I know what I want. I realize that always changes, though. Mm-hmm. As I grow and develop, I go through different stages. But I think the biggest thing is that I'm just self-aware.
Okay.
And I don't get too caught up in necessarily sticking to one thing or the other. I just go with what I'm passionate about at the time and give everything I have towards that.
I like that. So I know you first mentioned that you know what you want. Mm-hmm. So walk me through just that process, because at first nobody knows what they want to do at first, right?
Yeah.
So walk me through that process when you're kind of like going through different careers or like what you wanted to do and then how you finally landed to where you're at right now.
Yeah, so I'll try to keep this a little bit short because it's a long story.
We got time. Don't worry.
So this all started, like, I used to be super into photography. That was like my first thing I got passionate about. So I started doing that. I got my first camera like in 8th grade. I saved up, did a lot of chores to save up for my first camera. Then I read like a photography for dummies book. Just got obsessed with that. Like all through high school, I was obsessed with it. Went to college. I was still pretty obsessed with it, but I went to college for marketing.
Okay. So
I never went for photography. I didn't plan on photography being my actual job. I just kind of wanted to do it in my free time. I enjoyed doing it, so kind of played it by ear for that. And then as I got closer into the end of college, like halfway through, I kind of thought about how photography nowadays is so like oversaturated, especially with iPhones, and like everybody has access to the best gear now.
Yep. And
so I started to realize that even though I like it, it's not something that I necessarily see a big potential in, for me at least. So I sat down and I was like, so I love the art, but I'm also like a business oriented person, and I understand business pretty well.
Did you go to school for business, or what was your degree in?
Yeah, so at this point, I was like just general business. I wasn't declared.
Gotcha.
So I kind of sat down and I thought about what can I do that is related to art, but I can work in the business side. And so I kind of thought, I was thinking what I could do, kind of what the market needs, because photography is like, you can't really get paid too much to do that. So I sat there, kind of thought through my options, and I thought about like graphic design. And that's something that brands are always going to need no matter what. They're always going to need a logo or like clothing design,
right? Whatever
it may be. So at the time of thinking this, I had never done any design ever.
Really?
Yeah, I just thought about it. I was like, it makes sense in the market. There's a space for it. It's a little bit harder to do than photos. So it pays better. It's less replaceable. And so that was kind of the first thought I had. And I was like, well, I guess I could kind of dive into that. So I kind of, at that point, I stopped doing photos. And then it was basically a minor in college for graphic design.
Okay.
But the majority of my classes were marketing oriented.
Jeez, my goodness. So walk me through, you make the switch. Now you're doing graphic design.
Mm-hmm.
Walk me through some of the trial and errors, some of the ones where you're like, it's kind of bad, because everybody always sees like the great stuff, but you know, it's a process. You don't just wake up out of your bed one day and, well, some people, you know, you could wake up and be like, I'm the greatest at this and everything I put out is dope. But like at first there's going to be some errors and just like working through that and the struggles of it. Talk to me about that process.
Yeah, so it's kind of a long process. Photography, I'd done it for so long that for my age, I was like pretty good at it because I've been doing it since I was in 8th grade.
Right.
And then I got into design. Some of the classes I took in college, like I had never opened like Photoshop or Illustrator, any of those programs, but everyone in the class had been doing this since like high school. So I went from like the best at what I was doing to legitimately like the worst at what I was doing. Yeah. And so even the most basic things of all time in design, like I had no idea how to do. Jeez. So it's kind of like, it was good and bad because like it sucked at first because I felt like behind the curve, but then it kind of just made me super hungry. I was like, I know that I can get good at it. Mm-hmm. I just need to put in the work and catch up to all these other people.
Right.
And I realized early on that a lot of it isn't the technical skill you have, but it's more the creativity you have and the way that you can like portray your message visually. And so I think for a lot of the kids in my class, like they were better technically skill wise than I was.
Yep.
But I think I had a better vision than they did. And so I didn't get myself too caught up in like the skill set. I just started working, like I like dedicated my life to it. I was like, I'm done with photos.
Yep.
And a lot of people kind of were like a little upset about it at first because
like your friends and family or like,
yeah, I mean, they weren't like upset, but like that was like what I was known for. And like that was like what so many people, like so many of my friends were photographers and people just like didn't get it. They're like, oh, you're just like done with photos now. And it's like, I mean, I'm just like shifting. Like I want to do something different.
Yeah.
But it's hard for them to see that through when I'm like in the early stages. Like, they couldn't see my end goal and they couldn't see like my vision. They just thought I was like dipping on photography because I just didn't care anymore. But
that's tough. That's tough.
So like it was tough at first, but I just started working as hard as I could, dedicated all my free time to that. I think something pivotal for me is like in classes, I would do the assigned projects for design, but none of my peers would work after hours on their design skills. So like the first summer, so I took classes in fall.
Yep.
And in that first summer, I was like, I'm going to do 3 designs every week, just personal, like going to create a prompt basically. Like just create a fake project, whether it's like a fake album art or like a t-shirt design, whatever. I would do 3 projects a week, every week of summer. So then I left that semester the worst in my whole entire like major.
Right.
Like the worst kid there. Came back, no one had touched their program since school.
Oh.
And I like grinded, dude. Like every day I was working in those programs. And so went from the worst to like not the best, but like definitely I would say like top 5% as far as skill wise in my class. So
dope. So throughout that process, while you know we're talking about the college aspect, did you have like a mentor? Like who were you looking to for like guidance or inspiration, or just like was there somebody there to help you with that, or is it just you yourself?
Yeah, there was no one there to help me. And there was like, even now to this day, like I have inspirations, but I don't have any kind of mentor. I don't have anyone for guidance on things. I just kind of like,
you just did it.
I just know what I want. Like I said earlier, I know what I want and I'm just going to work as hard as I can to get there. And like, I would like to have a mentor. It would save me trial and error. But as of right now, I really don't know anyone that is doing what I want to do. Yeah. There's like really famous designers that have done things, like even Virgil, designer for Off-White, like probably my biggest inspiration, but I want to do things different than he does. Like no disrespect, I just have a different route that I want to go.
You have your own lane.
Yeah. And so like there's people I look up to, but right now I don't have a mentor and it's something I want, but I'm not waiting around.
You're not chasing it.
No, I'm not waiting around for someone to tell me the way because that's just wasted time.
Yeah. And before we continue, one of the most important parts that you talked about was just like the grind. A lot of people who are aspiring to do something, like be an artist or be whatever they want, they're afraid of that grind. That 3 projects a week, people are scared to do that. Like they want that immediate return. Like as soon as they fail or if they see they're bottom of their class, like, you know what, I can't do this. I'm just going to fall back. But appreciate the grind, appreciate the process, because if you take each step seriously, it's going to make the end game more rewarding, getting to that next level, getting to that next step.
Yeah, and that's like the biggest thing for me is like, I think in some ways you can maybe teach work ethic, but
yeah,
you can only teach a little bit.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You can definitely shape somebody's attitude and like
Mm-hmm.
shape the way they view things, but like to have just a ruthless mindset on like chasing what you want, like that's something that I realized early on. Like, number one, I'm not going to be the best at what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, I'm not always going to be the smartest, but if I can work harder than anyone,
man, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to get me further than like saying, oh, I wish I was better at this, or I wish I had more time. It's like, if I just work as hard as I can outwork people, and that's going to make a difference.
At the end of the day, it's better to say you did everything you could and it didn't work out than to say, damn, I wish I would have did this, or I wish I would have did this better.
Live with no regrets, man.
That's right. That's right. So going forward, I want to get to some of the bigger projects that you worked on. So before you got there, though, was it networking? Like, what was the next step once you reached the top of the class, or towards the top of the class? Kind of walk me through how you got from there to what you kind of been doing now.
Yeah, so like I kind of had a weird, like a long-term mindset about it. So before I was even good at designing, I knew that connections and networking like take time to develop. I know that once you're good, you don't just get all the jobs. Like, so even when I sucked, even when I didn't have any experience, I would send 100 direct messages on Instagram a day, like companies, like artists, anyone I could help, like basically the same thing to all of them. Like, hey, starting out, need to build my portfolio.
Right.
I'll do it for free. Let me know. And I knew like no one's going to hit me up right away because I wasn't that good.
Yep.
So I just hit up like probably thousands of people, like seriously, probably thousands of people. And then like over the years, like one or two people would hit me back. And then like 2 years after that, then people really started to hit me up. And that's when I had like a more defined skill set and I could actually provide value. And I'm sure that's why people started hitting me up. So
that was the main one was Instagram messages, getting messages out there.
Yeah, I mean, that was the main thing. And like I said earlier, with the whole work ethic thing, I know I'm not going to be the smartest. I know I'm not going to be the most talented. But if I'm the hardest working and I have the best network, I'm going to get I'm not all the jobs, but I'm going to get most of the jobs.
You're going to get to pick which ones you want. It's not going to be, you're just going to get what's given to you. Yeah,
and like there's people in some of my peers are like way better designers than me, but they don't get as many jobs as I do because number one, they either don't have the network, they don't have the business mind that they need, or they don't have the work ethic. So if it's not something they're like in love with, they're not going to put in the time to make it work.
Yeah, and I think that the business aspect is something that people don't get until later down the line. Like I keep referencing artists because there's such a similarity between people who do music and also people who are artists in terms of like artwork, graphic design, things like that, because the business aspect is something you need to have, whether it's like working with labels, working with other artists, working with your prices, things like that. You have to have that mindset because otherwise you're going to get fucked over to start off. And then you're like, oh man, I got to learn the hard way. But for you, it seems like because you went to school for business general at first, you kind of had that already going. So by the time your business started coming, you had everything straight away.
Yeah. And that was the thing for me is like, before I knew I wanted to do design, I realized that it's a generalization, but most artists don't understand business.
No.
And that's where I was like I said, not the best artist, not the most skilled, but I understand business really well. So if I can have a good grasp on that and I'm decent at the artwork, that puts me a step ahead of someone who's unbelievable at art,
1,000%.
but doesn't understand business at all.
1,000%.
Because you can't do business if you don't know business.
100%.
It's like you can be as good of an artist as you want, but if you don't understand how business works, you're not going to get consistent gigs.
I'm going to make sure they clip that part right there, and they're going to post that 1,000 times because people need to hear that over and over and over again because that's so important.
Yeah.
What was your first major break, or like your first big project that you would consider working on?
I would say the first big client I ever worked for, like the biggest one I ever worked for at the time, was Gary Vaynerchuk.
Woo.
That was someone that was like, I remember I put it in so I'm a big goal-oriented person. Like, I write down all my goals from like daily, weekly, monthly, 6-month, year, 5-year, 10-year, even 20-year goals.
Yep.
And I wrote down one of my 5-year goals was work with Gary Vaynerchuk. And I did it like 7 months after I wrote that. And I was like, damn, I need to reset these goals.
For the people who don't know, explain to the people who that is, because some people might not know.
Yeah, so Gary Vaynerchuk, I don't fully know how to describe him. He's basically just the most like popular marketing like business guru right now. He's like super big. He invests in like Snapchat. He invests in everything, man. He invests in like Facebook before it went public, Snapchat, Twitter, I think like Venmo.
Yeah, he was ahead of everything pretty much.
Yeah, and he's like, yeah, his big goal is to buy the New York Jets eventually. So, and he's well on his way. Like,
oh yeah,
he has his own agency. I think they're doing like a couple $100 million a year in revenue. So,
and how did this come about?
Long story short, so right now I work for an agency called Social Butterfly, and throughout college I was freelance designing for them, and I was basically their go-to for everything. And one of their connections booked Gary Vaynerchuk for a speaking event in Minnesota, and they hired Social Butterfly to do the marketing for it.
Oh,
so then I was the designer, so then I designed all the advertising.
Jeez. Oh my God. So
yeah,
you mentioned that was on your 5-year goal list, right? To work with him.
Yeah.
So how you got that in 7 months? You said.
Yeah.
How do you remain hungry still? Because like for some people that's like huge. That's like, oh man, like I'm gonna sit back and enjoy this. But from talking with you, I know you're not that type of person where it's like that little taste just made your mouth water for more. So how did you like keep pushing yourself and not like get settle like, hey, you know what, I worked with him, I'm chilling for a little bit?
Yeah, I just think like for better or for worse, that's just like not in my blood. Like I just don't I don't know, sometimes it's like a downfall because like not that I'm never happy, but I'm like never satisfied with where I'm at. Like I'm always gonna want to do more.
Yeah.
And like that's good for a business aspect, but I go back and forth. Like I try to just be grateful for what's happened and try to like be present in the moment, but balance that with just being hungry, because I seriously think complacency is like a disease, dude. Like if you just settle for what you've already done, like that's the end of it. Like you have to be looking for the next best thing, and you have to be pushing yourself, or else you're just gonna plateau. Yeah. You're not gonna keep at that same rate.
You know, when in high school they always have a guest speaker who speaks at your graduation. You're just like, dude, shut up. Like you're talking about a whole bunch of stuff that's not important. At mine, the guy gave like 10-minute speech. Wasn't important, but he had a minute where he talked about being comfortable, and his message was, don't get too comfortable, because the moment you get too comfortable, it's all downhill from there. Be comfortable being uncomfortable was his message, and that stuck with me forever. Yeah. Because too many people, once they find something they're comfortable at, they stay there. You get complacent, like you said. So that's wild. Talk me through some of the other projects. That's not the only big like.
No, that was the start.
I've seen the Instagram bio. I've seen some of the projects. So talk me through, you know, what the next one was and kind of just how the ball kept rolling.
Yeah. So I don't remember the exact order that it all went down. So Gary V was the first big one. I was still in college when that happened.
That's wild.
That was like about 2 years ago, a year and a half maybe. The first big one after that. So I was still doing a little bit of photos at the time. Okay. I went on part of a European tour with a rapper. His name is Young Gravy. He's from Minnesota. So I did that with him. Did photos for that tour. Ended up doing some mock-ups for his tour poster, like design. So I did that. That was last winter, like fall area. And then, so that was 2019. 2020, the first big gig I got, I did a brochure design for Floyd Mayweather. That was that's definitely probably my biggest to date. Jesus. So that was sweet. That was like, he basically had a gala event that he has every year.
Like a black tie?
Yeah, it's black tie gala event. And it was sweet, man, because I had to like write down the list of like some of the special guests there, and it was like Lil Wayne was there, like Diddy was there, like Bad Bunny, like all these big names. And it's like, that's at every table at the event. Like they're holding my work, even though they don't know it's me. Like that was a big moment for me. I was like, dude, with Gary V, Floyd Mayweather under my belt now, like I can raise my prices, number one, but number two, like people just look at me different, because from like if you think about it, like globally, or even from like a country standpoint, like 23-year-old designer from Minnesota, that's not that appealing to most people. Nope. You know what I mean? But then if I can just like, now I just stop kind of telling people my age, like from a business standpoint, like people know my age, but like I don't put it on my website, and I don't even put that I'm from Minneapolis, because I realize if I just have those bigger names on there and not talk about myself too much, like people look at me differently.
Oh yeah, 1000%.
And it's like, I've only been designing for 3 years, but if I told people that, they probably wouldn't trust me as much.
Yeah, though, what you've done in those 3 years, like, there's probably people who've done it for 10, 15 years, and they're like, not even close. Did you get to go to the blacktop? Like,
I did not. No.
Floyd didn't get to.
No.
Oh man, that would.
I wish.
That'd have been wild. How did that come about? Was that through the company too, or how did that one?
No. So most of these like big kind of crazy opportunities just come like one off. People will hit me up, and like this opportunity is like we host a networking event in Minneapolis called Link and Drink, and somebody came to me after Link and Drink, and they had a connection who worked with the money team in LA, and they're like, hey, do you know anyone that like does design? He's like, I want to throw your name in there, but I want to make sure you're down for it because it's a big job. Like, yeah. And I was like, dude, I'm definitely down for it. I honestly didn't expect it to be paid because a lot of those big gigs just don't pay. Yeah. Because they know that they have leverage because it's Floyd Mayweather. Like,
they'll just get somebody else.
A million people will do it for free.
Right.
So I was pretty happy to find out I was actually paid. Damn. And yeah, I did that. That was in March this year, and then in 2019. And then in May, I did some design work for a brand called Young and Reckless. Damn. So
don't say just some brand. Most people know Young and Reckless. That's a big, big brand.
They're a sweet brand. Like, the thing that was like, so Mayweather's definitely a bigger name. Right. But like for me, like I grew up watching like Robin Big and like Fantasy Factory and like seeing Drama, dude, like on those shows when I was like Drama was basically my idol when I was 8 years old.
Yeah, those are like the years where you're always watching TV, of course. I felt the same way. So
yeah, and then to like, number one, get work for him, but then also just like go meet him and like, oh, man. I don't know, it's just crazy. Like the Mayweather thing was definitely a bigger opportunity, but just going to meet Drama, he's dapping me up. Man, your work is so sick. And I'm just like, bro, the fact that you're saying that and when I was 8, I was watching on MTV is like,
dude.
But like you said earlier, like it's cool and like, I'm stoked on it, but you just can't get caught up in it. Like, it's on to the next thing. Like, you just can't sit there and be like, oh, I did this. Like, now I'm just chilling. Like, you have to be looking for the next opportunity.
Since you mentioned that, talk to me just a little bit about some of your next goals or, like, some things you want to cross off your bucket list next. Because you've accomplished a lot in so little time. So I want to hear what's, like, the next step for 2020 later down the line. Just give me something there.
Yeah, so, like, for me, my favorite thing to design is like anything with music. So whether it's tour posters or album art, whatever it is, music is where I relate to.
What most. A great segue, because behind us we have a beautiful, beautiful cover art that you did. Speak to a little bit about that one. So this is, go ahead and just say the artist, the title, kind of the inspiration behind it.
Yeah, so this was for a local artist named Wilson. He had his first album called Soul. Got hit up to do the album art, and yeah, I just did it for the local homie.
God, knocked it out.
That was one of the first album arts I ever did, honestly. So when I went on tour with Young Gravy, he has a producer called Inglewood. Okay. And he's like, he makes some like lo-fi beats, like some more chill stuff as well as some rap beats. But like he's popping off lately. Like I think 2019 he had 40 million streams on Spotify. Like some songs had 10 million streams alone. So I did, crazy. This year I did 3 album arts for him, and I'm working on one right now that'll release in a few days here. But so my biggest, my 20-year goal is to design 20 album arts on the top Billboard 100 at one time. And like that's a crazy goal, but jeez, I definitely think it's possible. Oh, yeah. Like easy. I've only been doing this for 3 years, and I've already done stuff that I would never imagine. And so my biggest goal for 2020 is just to get one album art on the top 100.
Jesus.
So, I mean, that's a big goal, but like I said, the Gary Vee thing, I was thinking 5 years. Happened in 7 months. Like
knocked it out quick.
I'm just trying to set my goals like insanely high and just work as hard as I can towards it. If I don't hit that goal in that time frame, like I still put my all to it and I worked hard. So
aim for the stars. If you get stuck in the sky, who cares? You're in the sky at that point.
For real.
Definitely. Well, I did want to talk a little bit too. We have this calendar here. Yeah. I went through the calendar, bruh. This calendar is crazy. Talk to me a little bit about like the process of making it, how long it took, and just some of the inspiration. Because for me, looking at it, each one kind of motivated me as like a vacation spot. When looking at it, I'm like looking at the photo for the month. I'm like, dang, like a skiing in January. I should be skiing in January. That's my vacation spot, working towards it. So kind of what was your inspiration for making it, and what that process look like?
Yeah, so like a kind of long story on this. When I was in freshman year of college, that was the only year. That's the only time frame since I was 14 that I didn't have a job
Mm-hmm.
because I was just in school. I didn't have a car. Like, had to make sure I got my good grades
It was
first.
it was a little hard back then.
Yeah, so that was the only 8 months of my life since I was 14 that I wasn't working. And so I was like, all right, how can I, number one, make some money,
Mm-hmm.
but number two, kind of build my portfolio. So I was into photos at the time, like I said. So I had photos from all around Minnesota, and I was like, I'm just going to make a calendar. Like, I don't know. A lot of people like calendars. It's a good gift. A lot of people like supporting local artists.
Right.
So I was like, I'm just going to see what happens. So made this calendar. Photos were like subpar. It was my first time doing it, so I didn't know the best like production on it.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of winged it, and I did it. And I think like 20 or 30 people bought them the first year. I was like, that's not
That's
too
lit.
bad.
Yeah,
Like,
that's lit.
for me, I was like, that's a few $100 like I didn't have. So
Yeah.
that was like the first time I had made real money off my photos, because like in high school I did like senior photos and like random stuff. Like,
Mm-hmm.
first photos I ever did for money was like a concert when I was like 14. I took photos for some band, got like $20 out of it.
Hey.
But yeah, so that was like the first time I made like a few $100 off photos. And so every year after that I did them. So this is my 5th year doing a calendar. This is the first time I haven't done photos, because even last year I was still like into graphic design, but
Right.
I still was taking photos.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier to do a photo calendar than a design calendar. But I realized like this is my 5th year doing it, and now I can name 20 people doing Minnesota photo calendars, and there's no diss on it. Like, everyone wants to make their money, and that's fair. But
Where did it start at?
my main thing is like I just always want to be different. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to be, and that's why I don't want to do photos anymore. Is like everyone can do it. Like,
Right.
it's just not. I want to do something that no one else can do, and
Talk.
people can do designs, but I think I have a different take on it than most people. And so it's the first year that I did designs on the calendar. I spent 150 hours designing this. And this is after like
Jesus.
I just had the craziest Black Friday, Cyber Monday grind in my life. Like, we worked nonstop from August until the day after Black Friday, Cyber Monday, to just make sure all the campaigns went well, like everything for our clients went well.
Yeah.
So I was working overtime for like 2-3 months. Then the day it finished, I was like, time to make these calendars.
Oh, so you went to another grind right after that.
Oh yeah, 150-hour grind in like a 2-week period, and I was like, it was tough, man. Like, it tested my mental strength a lot. Like, there was 2-3 times I almost was like,
fuck this, I'm done.
I almost like didn't do them, but I just powered through and I made it happen. And yeah, people are seeming to like them so far. So
Damn. So what kind of was your inspiration behind each photo? Was there anything behind each photo, or were you kind of just like, this is what I'm picturing in July, like type of vibe?
yeah, it was a little bit of both. I had a few of the designs made prior.
Mm-hmm.
There was about 3 or 4 that I had already made, and I made them basically just off inspiration of how I was feeling at that time, whether it was like a summer month or a winter month. Like, I just kind of made a design based on that time.
Right.
So I had to make like still 9 designs. And I was like, well, I have to make it relate to the month it is. So I
Gotcha.
basically just thought of things that inspire me each month.
Mhm.
So like the winter ones are like more snowy. There's like a winter train. There's like a skier.
Mm-hmm.
Then for the summer months, I have like a lot of beach vibes, like
Of
road
course.
trips with like Volkswagen vans. And
Yeah.
see, I kind of went all over. I pulled inspiration from a lot of different areas, but yeah, it was just kind of things that I personally resonate with, and something that I knew I could be passionate about, because although I want people to enjoy the calendar for themselves, I can't put in 150 hours if I don't like it.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
it had to be something that I genuinely related to,
I
and
wanted
that
to do.
something that I was inspired by. So
Yeah, definitely. So where can people find it? Where can they purchase that? Tell the people.
yeah, so there's a link in my Instagram bio. My Instagram is just Ian Deloney. And so in that link, I have the link to the calendars, and I have like a link to my main website,
Dope.
and then a podcast I've done in the past. So
Hey, shout the podcast out too. Go ahead, plug
Yeah.
everything.
So I only have like one podcast so far, just an intro, but I'm working on a second one right now.
Dope.
The main story of the podcast, it's called Beneath the Surface, and it's just talking about kind of deep stuff. Like, I don't know, I'm not a surface level person. I like really deep talks, and I don't like talking about small talk. So
Dope.
the whole premise of that is just like how I'm inspired. I want to inspire other people and just get deep on things that kids our age don't usually talk about.
Dope. That's dope. I got a couple more questions for you before I let you go. The first question, what advice would you give to younger you, and what advice would you give to somebody who's in like graphic design right now in school, like a freshman, sophomore type of person?
If I could give myself, my younger self advice, it would just be to get into design earlier because I just didn't even know that I liked that.
Yep.
I had never tried it until like 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. But I think about this often. Like if I could have been, so I got into photos in 8th grade.
Yep.
If I got into design in 8th grade, man,
It'd be a wrap.
Yeah. I mean, there's no regrets. Like I needed the photos and the development skills
to get there. Yeah.
And like photos helped me curate kind of my artistic viewpoint and like why I want to do these things. So there's no regrets at all, but I think I could be a lot further if I would have started earlier.
Definitely.
And then for anyone that's like early on into the design career, I would just say, like I said, man, I put a lot of pressure on myself with those personal projects. Like just push yourself as hard as you can to do as much as you can when you're young, because I was working like at most 40 hours a week, just kind of full-time jobs that didn't take up too much mental capacity. Right. So I had free time afterwards to keep grinding, and like I could stay up later back then. And if I could just tell everyone to do that, to just get kind of lost in your craft, like, because
that's dope. That's good advice.
When you're early on, like that's the only time you're gonna be able to put that much time towards something. So if you can just sacrifice, I mean, I never really went out and like went to parties or bars or anything, but that's just a personal thing. But I honestly think not going to those parties and just like sticking inside and like really focusing on something that I care about made a huge difference. Because I mean, in college, all my friends would be like, oh, you haven't gone out with us in months or whatever. It's like, I get why you're upset about that, like, but you just don't see what I'm aiming for. Like, because I wrote down I want to work for Gary Vaynerchuk in 5 years. Like, I knew that was going to take thousands of hours of work, and
easy.
I'm like, I'm down to give up a Friday night here and there.
Not every Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, I'm down to just give up some of those things that a lot of kids my age value for something that, like, when I die, I'm gonna be proud of. Like,
yeah, 1,000%.
I could pass up on parties any day of the week. Like, I just don't care about that stuff. But if I were to die young and I just didn't kind of reach some of these goals that I set for myself, like, I know I'd be disappointed in myself. So
1,000%. I think that's great advice. And then my last question for you: you can have dinner with 3 people, dead, alive, whatever era, whatever time. Who's sitting at that table?
Man, that's a hard question. I would say number 1 for sure got to be Picasso.
Gotcha.
Just because
I need, like, you don't have to give like the full explanation, just like a little reason why too.
Picasso for me, like, obviously everyone knows Picasso. He wasn't, the thing with him is like, he wasn't the most talented traditional artist ever. Like, his work didn't sell because he followed the rules. Like, his work sold because he broke the rules. Like, he did things differently and did things that no one's seen before.
Yep.
And that for me is like, obviously I have a way different style than him, but for that reason, like, that's something I really look up to and I really admire. And so for that reason, he'd be up there.
Easy, got a spot at the table.
Yeah. Second one, philosopher named Alan Watts.
Okay.
This man, like, when I was in middle school, this is a crazy story. When I was in middle school, I would sit on YouTube and watch like philosophy speeches and debates. Like,
really,
I didn't even like hang out with people. Like, I wanted to, like, and that's why I'm so deep with how I think now, is like, I wanted to kind of find out how things work in my brain and like how I can look at life differently, because I feel like I've always been a little bit more like mature in my mindset than people my age. And for that reason, I've just always like looked up to him, because he just kind of like, he's like a weird kind of philosopher where he talks about extremely deep things, but he simplifies it so easily. And it's like, I was literally 10 years old listening to his debates and like his speeches, and it impacted me. And like, he's probably the most influential person in my entire life, because he's the reason why I wanted to say no to parties and stuff in college, because I was already past the point of like, oh, let's get messed up and forget about all this stuff we're working towards. It's like,
no, you want to talk about why we're working towards.
Yeah, it's like
these
I want to
things.
be as focused as I can be, and I want to do everything that I dream of. And
Dope.
so he definitely has probably the most profound impact on my entire life.
That's crazy.
And then I would say thirdly,
the last spot.
It's a toss-up. I'm leaning towards Virgil. It's a toss-up between Virgil and like Jimi Hendrix, though.
They both get Jimi Hendrix. They both get spots at the table. That's all right.
So Jimi Hendrix, he also impacted me when I was young. I just loved his music, and I appreciated how differently he did things. And it was crazy to me how young he died and how little time he had in the game.
Yep.
But how big of an impact he had on like seriously the world. Like everything in music changed because of this 26-year-old.
Right.
It's like if he would have been around till his 70s, it's just crazy to think about how big of an impact he would have had. So he inspires me a lot. And then Virgil, like I said earlier, he's my biggest design inspiration basically. And I would definitely like to get some tips from him.
For sure.
Because he's like, I don't know, like he's still relatively young, but he's impacted the culture in a way that I really look up to. And like I have this debate with a lot of people, like a lot of people who aren't designers don't understand why Virgil's so like such a big deal. And it's like, I get it because his work is simple. And like from an outsider standpoint, you might not understand like, why can this dude sell his shoes for $1,000? And it's like, because he's impacted the culture in a way that it's like, it's not just that his design is so complicated that it's worth that much money. It's like, it's so simple and it ties in so well to the culture.
Yes.
That it's like
1,000%.
Yeah, it's relevant. And so I just really admire him for that. And I would love to sit down with him one day.
I think he's had his foot on the culture's neck for such a dominant run that we haven't seen. And I don't even know who the last I can compare it to, because this run he's been on the last couple years has just been like bananas to see. Because like you said, it's simple, but at the same time, it's like, okay, I see why this is going for so much, or why this is so dope, because it ties back. Sometimes it ties back to the bigger message, or just dope, man, all around.
Yeah, and so like just to elaborate a little bit, why I like him so much is like his designs are simple, but they're always out there. Like everything he does is like a little bit controversial.
Yep.
And a lot of people like in the older generation they just don't get it. You know, they're just like, why would someone want this? Why is this so popular? But I really like how he's constantly pushing that needle of what's cool and what's not. And like my two biggest inspirations are like music and fashion. And so he is tied into both of those. Like,
Easy.
Did all of Kanye's album art. Like he's doing like just design work for the biggest fashion labels like Louis Vuitton and Nike. And so for all those reasons, like I want to be like him in my own way. But yeah, he's like, his impact, I want to have a bigger impact.
Aim for the stars. That's why.
Seriously.
That's why you said 5 years for Gary, and then look at you, 7 months. So I'm sure at this rate, it's coming. It's coming.
We'll see.
But I do thank you a lot. Let the people know again where to find you at. Shout anything out you want to shout out. Just, let people know how to find you, because I feel like after this goes out, people are going to know where to find you at, because they're going to have questions, or they're just going to want to look for you as inspiration. So
yeah, so all my social media is just my first last name, no characters, no numbers, just Ian Deloney. And then the handle on that's ID Visuals. So it's the same on every social media. You can find me there. It's my website URL. So
dope. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Again, this is why we try to have dope people on, because there's a lot of gems that he dropped. So play this back twice, 3 times, because there's so many things that you said can apply to a lot of people who are not just in design, who are just in various fields. It applies to everybody. So make sure you listen back multiple times, catch all those gems.
Thank you for having me, man.
For sure.